What would you say is your biggest regret with Kick so far?
Biggest regret. I think when we first started, like we got too caught up in this whole idea of like this rivalry with Twitch, right? That was silly. It was too much about like, oh, we have to keep the momentum up and grow really quickly. Like I think in the early days, if we kept things a lot more organic and just went much slower, things would have progressed much more naturally. And I think what ended up happening is we did a lot of maybe irrational contracts, which didn't make much sense, and we didn't quite understand like exactly what we were doing and who we were working with, and I think a lot of those deals to begin with kind of set this precedent, which was very difficult to walk
Yeah.
back. So that was, I think, you mentioned before some of the headlines and stuff kind of push Kick back like a year. I think a lot of those original sort of pushes we did also set Kick back a year. So that was a little bit silly, but again, I think we learned a ton on the back of that. Like we learned an absolute ton. So I don't know. I think the good news is all the mistakes you make in live streaming become lessons. Like you just learn. I think you just have to get burnt, make a few wrong decisions, and just course correct like constantly, because it's like uncharted. Like there's no one that can kind of like come and like tell you do this, don't do that. Like you just have to fuck up and learn. So we made some mistakes on that front for sure. But with that said, we also made some really good decisions. Like some of the people we chose to work with early on, like have been amazing. So you can't get the good without sometimes the bad, right? So it's hard to sort of look at it as a single point of regret, but that
Yeah,
that was yeah, that definitely comes to mind.
in 10 years, do you think that Kick will be bigger than Twitch?
I don't know, man. I'd be surprised personally if Twitch was still around in 10 years. I don't know whether it will be, but if it is, like I hope it is because it'd be good for live streaming. But I don't know. As long as Kick continues to grow, I'm not. I've said this before, right? A couple of times on my streams. Like, I don't think it's really so much like one has to win, one has to lose. I kind of
Yep.
thought that at the beginning. It was almost like this like competition, but I think that mindset's changed. Like nowadays, as long as everything's healthy, as long as things are growing, as long as there's like a really active community and good like set of streamers on Kick, like who cares what's going on other platforms. I think the biggest thing that scares me is honestly is like the fall of long form streaming. Like I'm more worried that people are just going to keep moving to fucking TikTok and YouTube shorts and Instagram, whatever, right? Like I think it's more like how do we like protect live streaming in general. I don't think it's about fighting amongst like streaming platforms. Like we need to innovate and do something to protect the viewership because it is going down.
Yeah.
Like if you look over the last like 3-4 years, it's just going down like this. It'll probably speed up soon. Everyone's attention spans, everyone talks about this, right? It's going down. We're fighting for attention. So that's my bigger concern, to be honest with you. And I think like 10 years from now is like, do people still want to watch live streams in 10 years? And I really fucking hope so.
It's really hard with the contracts, and I used to have this conversation a lot with Dan, because before Dan, I'm sure you know this, the contracts were insane for streamers. It was like I forgot what her name was, but she was in charge of it, and she was like giving out $20 million for 2 years for a streamer. What do they have to do? Stream 200 hours. You don't get ad revenue or sub revenue, but you still have to stream 200 hours a month, and you get paid $2 million a year. And I would say this to Dan, and me and him would have this conversation, because Dan first came into Twitch, and his big thing was like, I'm getting rid of contracts, which was like hundreds of millions of dollars at that point, because every streamer who was big was trying to get a contract. He's like, I'm just getting rid of them. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, I completely understood. I wanted a contract, and I got it. He's like, why the fuck do we need these things? True. Because evidently what contracts do, and the problem with them, are you give someone a contract where it says, hey, here's $5 million a year, you just have to stream 100 hours a month. What are they going to do? They're not going to try. And that's exactly what happens every time. You give them that baseline, and you see these streamers go from trying and putting in work because you're dangling the carrot to just they don't try anymore. And I'm sure that's a problem that happened with you guys a lot, is you get these creators on these contracts who just wouldn't put in work because there's no need. They're getting their pay. And that completely screws you guys over. And also, I do agree with you. One big thing that definitely was bad in the beginning was you guys had this precedent because I think the big one was when XQC's contract got leaked of like $100 million or whatever it said. That made creators, and it made me say that too in my head. Like, wait a minute, if XQC is worth $100 million, and I'm like 2-3 times smaller than XQC, I should be worth $30 million, right? And it made streamers think that you guys would pay that much for them, and I think that kind of fucked things up for a little bit. Like I remember Dr. Disrespect was like, I want 50 million. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that was some pretty crazy times. I think that one. I think we could have handled how we worked with XQC way better. That could have been done smarter. But I think to your point as well, like I think the worst part about that whole sort of like situation you explained is like, say we would, work with a creator and we set up a contract, and the contract would say, okay, you have to stream 100 hours a month or whatever the conditions were. People would take the contract, they'd sign on, and then they would, come to Kick and that motivation would drop and they wouldn't put in the effort, like you said.
Yep. And
then the viewers would then be like, oh, it's all Kick's fault. It's Kick's fault for the fact that your viewers are dropping or your content's bad. And,
they blame
that kind of hurt a little bit because we're kind of looking there and going like, shit, like, what do you expect? Like, if you're going to sit there and grind a game that you've never played before for 10 hours and not even look at your chat and just try to get your hours done, of course, like, your viewers are going to not like Kick. But, again, I think that's massive learnings there because, it was this kind of like vicious cycle of like, spending money, then getting suboptimal results, and then actually creating kind of this negative connotation that Kick is like bad for your viewership and audience. Because the reality is, I do believe that, if you take the exact same content on one platform and take it to another, sure, there's pros and cons, but I think, you should ultimately get the same outcome. Hopefully the platforms are quite interchangeable. And I think people kind of had this perception that wasn't the case. But it wasn't always because it was, say, the platform. I think the platform had obviously a lot of room to improve, but the big thing was the content kind of changed. And that was the big reason that, people maybe dropped a little bit in terms of viewership or entertainment. But anyway, we learned a ton from that. It was some crazy times back then. It was fun though. It was a lot of fun. It was like we kind of just came out of the gates and just sort of steaming ahead and making some big moves. Which, to be fair, maybe if we didn't do that and make all that noise in the beginning, maybe Kick wouldn't be where it's at right now. Maybe that was needed. So that's the flip side too.